known each other for we've known each other for many, many years. And I mean, she grew up with my sister and family, and she's a Rasta gangster. And but underneath that exterior, she's a very loving and kind person. And Stephanie has, her life. I've watched her grow to the woman that she's become, and it's just such an honor to be able to introduce Stephanie and have her, introduce herself to you and her experiences in life, and how she arrived to where she is today and what her advocacy is about. She's also the treasurer for MBAC, and she's a nurse practitioner, and she has a lot of history in working in recovery. We worked together for many years as well, but she's went on to, deal with the medical side of this, because that's something that's really important, especially to people of color who, can be disenfranchised. So before I say too much, I'll introduce Stephanie. So Stephanie, take it away.
Well, I'd like to say thank you, Leah, for having me. She knows I'm not a fan of public speaking, but she's I've like she said, I've known her for a very long time, and she's been a great mentor to me. So she knows that this is one of the challenges she's presented for me throughout my life. So I will say that I am a person who's in recovery as well. Something like when I went to First Academy in 2001. So I think we're 22 years here now. And like I say, thank God for residential treatment, which is very important to me as a Black woman.
Stephanie, can you tell us a little bit about First Academy? Because a lot of people here are a little newer, so they don't understand or know about First Academy, and I don't want to overlook First Academy, since it was such a great program.
First Academy, yes. I'm not the expert on First Academy, but I will tell you it was one of the few programs where African Americans could go to and get the care that they needed to be successful on this journey. There were actually 5 houses when I came around in 2001. There was a men's house, there was a female's house, there was a house for women with children and pregnant women to go to. There was also a Hispanic house, and there was also an outpatient program which you had to attend after you graduated from the residential. In the residential program, it was in the process of like transition, and it was initially a program you could go to for 18 months or more. I'm glad I didn't get sent there when it was that long, but I did stay in treatment for a year, and I will say that I needed every one of those days that was available for me, which is something that I am advocating for today, because we don't have this type of treatment in the Black community anymore, and it's very sorely needed. Studies have proven that African Americans don't do well in outpatient treatment. They do, and I think it's mainly because of the socioeconomic factors that exist that don't allow us to be as successful as our white counterparts, our white brothers and sisters, whatever. I mean, we're all in this struggle of addiction, but it's very different coming from the neighborhood in which I grew up in. You know, people need someone who they can look to and identify with. And that's the main theme that I hear all the time, all the time. I've I've um I've been around, let's see. I initially I went to the program. I was sent there through the drug court, which is another thing that I find is very good that most people aren't advocating for as much because they're looking at it as a penalizing situation. But most people I know who've gone through the drug court and who've been successful appreciate the fact that they had that type of structure in their lives to be an incentive to stay in treatment as opposed to going to jail. Because back when I came around, that's what it was all about. There was no, oh, this is an opioid epidemic and let's help these people out. You either went to jail or you died in the street. So, you know, at least that's my experience from what I saw growing up. I am a child of the 60s, so I remember the people coming back from Vietnam, and I remember the people being on opioids at that time. So that's what I saw. I saw a lot of opioid addiction when I was young. And of course, you know, you don't grow up saying you're going to be a junkie. As a matter
Right
of
here,
fact, you
sure.
always say, I'm never
That's
going to,
okay, right here, fine.
I'm
Thank
never going to be that.
you.
And, but, you know, addiction doesn't discriminate. So here I am. But so I would say, like I said prior, residential treatment is sorely needed. And because I'm in the medical field and because I've learned a lot in terms of treating addiction, I'm very open to whatever helps. But I found that we've gotten away from the basic things that we had in place in the beginning. And I find that more emphasis is placed on just sending funds to outpatient sources. And no one was advocating for bed. I'm a member of Addiction Nurses, which kind of doesn't really function right now. Everybody here, I'm sure, probably knows Colleen LaBelle. She was headed the Addiction Nurses, and you know, she's done a great job doing the outpatient buprenorphine treatment. But from my perspective and from what I know, most African Americans are not into taking medication for treatment. Initially, people, you know, everyone who was on opioids eventually went to the methadone clinic. So it's not something that we're entirely against, but it's not something that abstinence is not something that's really at the forefront of what people talk about when they talk about addiction. And most African Americans I know might try some medication assisted treatment, but they usually say, I don't need that stuff. I can just stop. And that's the difference I see in these different communities. I have a lot of people that come into that have come into Whittier Street Health Center where I work. And I encourage them to be on buprenorphine, but they'll take it. But when I'm doing urine tests or whatever, I know that they're not taking it as they should take it. But it's an alternative to it's like an intervention that helps you access other resources. Because today, if you're not in the mainstream of taking Suboxone or these Vivitrol, other medication-assisted treatment, then you're excluded from a lot of programs and resources that are available to people in the who are active with addiction. So I'm finding that we're being excluded for that purpose, because most people, that I know are saying, I don't want that. Things have been changing a lot as far as the drug supply goes. Initially, the opioid epidemic came along. It was heroin and opioid prescription drugs, pills that were prescribed from doctors. At this point, you saw a lot of people, a lot of Caucasian people dying from the opioids. Since the coming of the fentanyl, now that they've put into the drug supply, we saw a lot of deaths. But it wasn't hitting the Black community as much as it's hitting them now, because we find that they have figured out that the most Black people use stimulants, which is something, historically you've not been able to get treatment for, and as much as treatment for cocaine. So you find that now that the fentanyl is in the cocaine supply, now you have these skyrocketing fentanyl deaths among African American people. One problem that's been a major problem historically is that you could not get into treatment if you were using cocaine, which is what I used when I was active. And a lot of patients and people that I treat also use cocaine. And so, accessing treatment was impossible. We've changed some policies and decided that, everybody should have access to treatment, but still to this day, if you want treatment for cocaine, it's like there is none, because there's no medication treatment for cocaine. So, historically, people have been told to go drink alcohol so that they could get help for their cocaine habits. Because, people tend to go on trends. We now see a lot of African Americans using opioids and fentanyl at this time, but there still exists a large population of African Americans who are using stimulants and are unable to access treatment. And when I say treatment, I mean medication-assisted treatment, and I mean treatment in general, because you can't go to detox and say that you use cocaine. 9 times out of 10, you won't be accepted, and if you are accepted, you get a 2-day stay. You get a 2-day stay, which doesn't allow you enough time to rest and, get your basic needs met and have time to meet with a case manager to even move on to further treatment. And further treatment for African Americans today is like non-existent. What I've seen happen at the Demic Center was really disappointing. I worked over at Demic for a while, which was a program that had many African American people working in positions as management positions and other positions where a person can go there and see someone who they can identify with. Identification is very important. I remember going to being sent to treatment in Fall River, and I don't think I lasted 2 to 3 weeks out there. I was just like, these people just don't understand me. They just don't understand me. I was at Stepping Stone and there was nobody there who looked like me. And so consequently, you feel like people don't understand where you come from, what you've been through. And it's really hard to confide in someone like that, which is why, once again, I said, thank God for treatment at First Academy, because I went there and I saw people who looked like me. And I saw people who I was friends with who, I didn't know where they had disappeared to, but, I found them there. So, and that's really, really, really important. We cannot dismiss the importance of having culturally competent care. And I find that sorely lacking in the Black community. I went to let's see. I graduated First Academy, and that's where I met Leah. She was the director of the program at the time. I knew her sister, but I didn't know her as well because, I was her sister's age, so I didn't really hang out with. But it was really nice to have somebody there, like I said, who I could be familiar with and who I could trust. And I find that, this is what I hear from my patients at Whittier Street, which is one reason I'm there, because it's a health center where there are Black clinicians, which is something I never saw anywhere else. And I get the same responses, oh, there's Black people here. I'm like, yeah, yeah, there's Black people here. So people are comfortable with talking, and like I said, what I hear from my patients is that they don't have anyone to talk to anywhere else. I encourage them to go on to further treatment, but they are telling me that everywhere is white and they're not getting the treatment as other people are getting the treatment. So that's my experience with what my patients are saying. I had a hard time like navigating the system, but I'm very persistent. I don't give up. Other people might not be as persistent and as stubborn as I am. As far as I'm concerned, I don't take no for an answer. So, I've had to fight a lot to get to where I'm at. I had a 3-page query, all with drug offenses that when I finally got sober and decided to go back to school was a big barrier. I was told I would never get into nursing school. So, I'm glad for the query reform which has happened. But that's also still an obstacle for many incarcerated Black people. We've made all these changes for addiction and treatment, but you still have hundreds of thousands people incarcerated for minor drug offenses, and nobody's saying send them to treatment. Nobody's saying send them to treatment. And of course, we know the penal system is predominantly Black. So this is, I find, as another problem. So once again, like I said, it was very challenging. I kept taking my nursing classes. I'm like, I don't care what they say. Because prior to my addiction, I wanted to be a doctor. And so I was doing pre-med at UMass, and it was just very overwhelming. And I fell into addiction, along with the trauma that I had from my past that I didn't know I had, which is another thing I had at First Academy. We had trauma recovery and empowerment groups that helped us deal with our trauma, which is major in persons staying sober for long term, you know. So I kept going to school. And I got my degree in human services because they wouldn't let me in nursing school. And then after I did that, I did the core reform thing, and I was still at Bunker Hill, and I applied for the program again, and they let me in. That was about after 5 years. They let me in. So I went to nursing school, and it was just so happens it was a white man who was running RCC who I went to. And I told him I really want to go to nursing school. And he said, I'm going to call the nursing board for you. You know, and he's like, well, she has this 3-page core review. Would you give her a license? And they said, well, we'll be cautiously optimistic. And so I said, well, that's not a no. So I'm going to continue and do what I do. But so eventually I got into nursing school, finished nursing, and I've been working in the field of addiction ever since. Like I said, but Colleen LaBelle was also a great mentor. I was sitting in her addiction nurses meeting for a couple of years while I was in nursing school. So, you know, I think she's a great mentor in what she's doing. But I also noticed Colleen didn't have any Black people working for her. This was initially, you know. And I always wanted to go and work for her, but like for some reason or another, I never got the job. And I think it's because I'm so outspoken about what I believe and what I see. And I really don't bite my tongue about things. You know, I never said to her, well, you don't have any Black people working for you. I just happened to notice that. You know, so time I graduated nursing school, she hired a few Black people, you know, and but most people, you know, they weren't in recovery, and so it was a learning experience for them, and like they've moved on. Yeah. So, anyways, I went to nursing school, and things worked out great, and I was working out at the Section 35 program, which I also think is great because me and Colleen bumped heads on the Mass Ave thing. I really didn't like the idea of people being on the street on Mass Ave, being allowed to use openly in the public. I thought that was a horrible idea. And so we bumped heads on that. We'll just say that. I am more for. I'm for people doing what they want to do, but I'm also for mandated treatment because I find that mandated treatment does work. You know, it doesn't work for everybody. There's nothing that works for everybody. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with, someone who's been using drugs for 10 years. They're back and forth to the emergency room because they've been overdosing over and over again, to section them and give them time to rest and eat and clear their head and actually see what's really going on. I spent 30 days at First Academy. My first 30 days was an orientation period, and I fought against being there every single day for them first 30 days. Everyone said, "Good morning, how are you feeling?" And I was like, "Are you crazy? You don't be asking me how I'm feeling. You know, I have a bottle of E&J at home, and I have some cocaine at home, and that's all I want to do is get to that." And they was like, "Oh, okay, next." And they didn't engage with me. They just let me say what I wanted to say. But, it took me 30 days to clear my head and actually realize that I wasn't high and I didn't need to be high. So, so for for people to expect people on Mass Ave who are shooting dope to actually make these good decisions that, oh, I want to be clean right now, it's difficult. It is very difficult to do that. When you're high, all you want to do is get high. So I don't know how you expect people to make these decisions on their own and say, oh, well, they'll get it together one day. As a psych MP, if somebody says, I want to kill myself, you detain them. You detain them for at least 72 hours. I have to sit one-on-one with them. I can't let them out of my office. So, the people shooting dope is just Russian roulette. You never know which one is going to get you. So, I'm all for people making decisions on their own, but I see nothing wrong with Section 35s, drug courts, and other mandated forms of helping people to get out of their own way and be taken care of for a while, which is the problem we have with the African American community. I ran a sober house for 5 years. And I will tell you, it was 95% white in the community. I was in Upham's Corner. Black people could not afford to come to my house and stay there. And I only charged $150, which was the cheapest. And I was told I shouldn't be charging that. I was told by other people of other sober houses, don't do that. And I just wanted to make it accessible and available for people. And I still find that African Americans could not come. And I will tell you, most of the white people that came to my program, they come out of treatment, they get jobs paying $20, $25, $30 an hour. They go work for their uncle, they go work for their fathers. Black people didn't have this. They didn't have this. I've never saw a Black person ever make more than $18 an hour at my program. So the disparities in everywhere, all these different factors play a role in why Black people aren't able to get treatment. They can't even afford to go to a sober house, which is why I say the residential care is sorely needed, because everybody needs a place to go to. You have this housing first model that they're doing, and I bumped head with Colleen on that. I'm not against people getting housing. I'm all for people getting housing, but I am definitely not bringing an active user to my house. I don't know if you're bringing them to your house, but I'm not bringing people who are actively using to my house. I have several houses now because I'm so, dedicated to this cause. I bought the house. I bought my sober house, and I went ahead and did that because I didn't like what I was seeing going on in the other sober houses, especially that one on Washington Street. That was the one that pushed me to say, because I was working at Dimick and I kept wondering why they're going over there to the lawyer's place and coming right back. And I was like, what is going on over there? So that pushed me to go buy a house and say, well, look, I'm going to make my own sober house and you're going to be safe here. At that point, people, were doing well. People were doing very well. And I bought another house, and people who did good at my sober house, I moved them into their own housing where they could have their own room on their own. Because as you know, sober houses, you double up on the rooms. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I have a couple of houses where people who graduate programs and they've stayed sober for a while, I house them there. So I'm all for supporting people in this recovery process, but I am definitely not bringing people who are using to my house, because I already know what that's like. I did that already. I already did that already. I'm not going to give somebody a safe place to use in my house. I'm not going to allow someone to die in my house. So that's my little perspective on that. So here we are. I was at Section 35. And the Section 35 was great. You'd be amazed how many people after being in a Section 35 did change their lives around, and were grateful that they got there. Not everybody's grateful, I'll tell you. I would say 5% of the people are mad with their parents and whoever who brought them there, and they deliberately say they're going back out and using. But for the most part, people were successful. It was there that one of my supervisors urged me to go on and get my master's. I hate writing, I hate talking. I just like doing stuff. I don't want to talk about it. Matter of fact, Leah and them always called me action. I would get up in the middle of a meeting and go do whatever they were talking about. And then I'll come back later and they'd still be talking. So I'm really not interested in talking about recovery. I'm interested in doing something. So, I was, to get me to go back to school and do all that writing was, I really thank her every day for having me get back in school, because now I see I really only went back so I could prescribe Suboxone, but to see the devastation of people's mental health is really eye-opening for me. I never could believe that people suffered so much from mental health ailments. So right now, I am much more. I'm more involved in the mental health aspect of it than I am in the treatment. But my goal is to really stay in treatment, substance abuse, I would say, from this point on. I've experienced the mental health side of it, and a lot of people who use substances mainly because they have mental health difficulties. They don't have the coping skills to deal with the anxiety, to deal with the stress, to deal mainly with the trauma. And I find that there are no trauma groups anywhere. I just don't understand, how you expect people to recover without dealing with the issues that brought them to using in the first place. Which is why residential treatment is sorely needed, because it gives you time to sit and it gives you time to talk and not have to run or be in the street or be exposed to all kind of temptations while you're trying to deal with these these traumatizing experiences that you've had. So I don't know how long I'm supposed to go here.
That was great, Stephanie. Thank you so much for just sharing your history. And it's very, very true that coerced treatment does work, because we had a lot of folks that were very successful with that model. So anybody have any questions?
Matter of fact, we had an 85% success rate, which is unmatched by anyone, locally or nationwide. I did surveys back when I was just starting school in human service, and I went and surveyed the different programs and was very surprised to see that the men responded 8 out of 10 that they had also been sexually abused. I was very shocked to find that out. So yes, residential treatment worked. Nothing wrong with outpatient, because I understand, that's working. It's working very well. It's keeping people alive, but it doesn't necessarily work for us in the Black community because we're too busy trying to deal with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Everybody just wants a place to live, something to eat, and they can't be bothered about trying to figure out how to navigate the system.
Jose has his hand up.
Hi, Jose.
Say thank you for your service. Thank you for sharing. And I want to say thank you because you mentioned DMIC. I remember you from DMIC. I was a client there when you were a nurse there, and we got a lot of good talks. That's how I remember you.
Okay.
DMIC saved my life because I was one of the massive zombies for a long time, and half my life I spent on the street killing myself. And sorry if I got emotional when you were speaking about that, because it brought me back. And I still get emotional. I just the reminders of what I went through. I constantly that's why I give back and I help others. I still battle myself up here every day. I'm not saying in a bad way, but to get better.
Right.
You know what I mean? I share what I've learned with others, and I try to at least give hope. If it wasn't for residential treatments, I don't know where I would be. If it wasn't for the people that had faith in me when I didn't have faith in me, I don't know where I would be. All those wonderful folks that seen something in me. As a Hispanic male, well, egos, we always we always getting into something. Like we're always busy. Like I can't sit still. And being like, yeah, my mentality was always getting into something else. And it took someone to tell me to get out of my own way to finally see that that's exactly what I had to do. Until I stopped getting in my own way, I wasn't gonna get better. I wasn't gonna be a better person or the better version of me, And I learned a lot from all the counselors that didn't make every detox I went to. 25, you know what I mean? Like and I'm not sad to say that. It took me that long to at least get it, understand it, should I say, not get it. Understand it, because this is a life thing to learn. But I'm grateful for you, women like you know what I mean, and people like all you know what I mean, that help people like me.
Where did you go to treatment, Jose?
Oh my God, I've been all over the place.
Where was the last one you went to?
Last one was after DMIC. I went to Casa Esperanza.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, and unfortunately life happens. I had death in my family, and I didn't want to pick up again, so I have a dual diagnosis. So, and when you mentioned cocaine, like that was one of my old triggers, and I didn't want to go back to using, so they didn't want to give me treatment. So they would rather leave me on the street, risking to pick up again, you know. And I had to luckily people knew me, and I was like, look, I want to die. I don't want to die. Like, I need help. Like, you'd rather see me go out there and pick up and die than give a person that's already in the right track the helping hand. You know, it took a lot to beg and convince to get that extra help when it's not necessary. You know, if somebody wants help, they deserve the help,
Mhm.
you know. But I don't know, I'm grateful to be alive.
So I have a question in the chat from Julie Pike.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Jose,
Thank
for
you,
that.
Jose.
Thank you for that. That was very powerful.
Are we talking about the sober houses?
Yes, did you see that?
I do. I just opened that up. Unfortunately, during COVID, I closed my sober house. I had several people there who had over a year of recovery and they went back out. I was in my last 2 semesters of school and I was at a new job and I couldn't maintain the house. I should have put somebody in charge, but I didn't think of that. I closed the house and the few people who stayed sober, I moved to my other house, which I have today. And the other house that I have today, most of the people I have there come from being incarcerated, which is the other issue that I'm dealing with because they're coming out and they're not accessing culturally competent care. And so therefore, they're so afraid that they're going to fail that I've provided a space for them where they're around other recovering people. So they have their peers as support. They do have to work. They do have to pay their way, but I'm finding that I'm doing a lot more case management because people don't know how to access services. So, I don't understand how all these people are coming out. They're being directed to particular programs and they're not getting the services that they need. Also, when I had my sober house, the probation and parole would not allow anyone to come to my house because I was the only house that had males and females in the same house. So they used the fact that I had males and females. I had couples living together because I was like, it doesn't make any sense for, she's going over there, he's going over there. They're going to be hanging out. They're going to be in hotels. Just put them together and allow them to be together. Everybody's talking about families do recover, but they separate people. They separate married couples. So, I have no problem, boyfriend and girlfriend, married, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. Everyone was welcome at my house. And because of that, I was told that it was going to be a disaster. And we ended up being very successful. But I did have to close the house because I couldn't manage it. But I do operate two other houses where people who, once they get out of treatment, they're welcome. But they're private. They're not classified as sober houses. But I rent the room.
Do we have any other questions? Stephanie, you had talked about like being at first in a culturally competent place, and then you said that you experienced being in treatment with, that wasn't culturally competent. What did you find, what were the biggest differences?
I guess it was just the environment itself. I have always been pro-Black. I grew up, seeing the Vietnam protests. I grew up in around the Black Panthers, the Mau Maus. I grew up in a very pro-Black uh, uh, environment where I was. And, the 60s and the 70s, I also went to Mecca. And I went to a private school in Mecca where there was a lot of racism. And I went to nice schools in Concord where there wasn't a lot of racism. So racism was a major thing in my early upbringing. So when I went to Fall River and just the interaction with the people who were running the place, when you're being treated differently. And racism, the racism even that I experienced in the various places that I work, it's, a lot of people don't even know that they're racist. It's just the way people have been brought up, so, and being a Rastafarian and learning all about love and God and, ultimately my own spiritual growth, I know that love is the ultimate and we're all one and the same. But unfortunately, that's not what I'm in contact with on a day-to-day basis, which is why I'm somewhat comfortable at Whittier, somewhat, because people are people wherever they go. I don't care what color they are.
Looks like
People
you
are
have two other
people.
questions, Stephanie.
Yeah.
You have Mary Ann and Omar.
Why don't we have Omar go first?
Okay.
Hi, I'm Omar.
Hi, Omar.
So inspiring, just you're talking about your experiences and your successes is extremely inspiring. And so I'm just wondering about
Those
your
3 pages of your Corey.
the 3 pages of your Corey and your struggles with that and getting into nursing school and the barriers. I'm curious how you were so successful with that. Are you able to explain a little bit about how you did fight successfully for yourself and get into nursing school regardless of the Corey?
I stayed out of trouble. Residential long-term treatment will teach you, you learn. So I didn't want to go backwards. The Corey reform law was very helpful in me being successful, because you were allowed to say, when they ask you, have you ever been convicted, you're allowed to say no now, which, it doesn't help in a lot of things, because I've tried to do other things where people can look into your Corey and you're told no, but for the most part, the Corey reform law was great in helping. So I just kept pushing forward. And I never gave up.
I just want everyone to know that MOAR was a big advocate for the Corey reform.
You.
And MOAR is very great when it comes to resources. I still have one of your books on my table that has a list of everything and everywhere you can go to get these things. And that's the only place the only thing I seem to find that has a vast amount of resources, because you go online and get all these ads and pop-ups and all kind of stuff, and you never know what you're accessing. But that little book with all that stuff is great.
Mary Ann, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And you should know the newest edition is coming out in the next week.
Well,
And
I
you
hope
should
to
be
get
one of the
one.
first people to get it.
Yes, I should. I really need it.
Yeah. Well, I so much, and I think I speak for everybody, value your sharing today, your life experience, your stamina and your willingness to say, wait a minute, I'm not taking no, and continuing on, and how you're sharing how much it's important to acknowledge trauma. Another thing that we have done, as you have talked about, regarding having culturally competent services, is that having good people like Leah, on our team, and the voice of MBAC and Julie, that we, along with the coalition we belong to, there is going to be money and for culturally supported services driven by people who represent community of color or other communities that need a voice, plus the opportunity to support those services, because it can be really, really hard to run a program, and people need to know the laws, and they need to get the help and support to do it. So I want to thank you for that. But just one more question before you leave. You said about being there for 30 days at first.
Yeah.
What was it that helped you to say, look, I gotta stay?
The judge.
The judge.
Judge.
It was her grandmother. It was
I
it was her grandmother.
was-
Her grandmother came to the program. She got there before Stephanie even got there. And she told me, my granddaughter's coming here, and I need you to take care of her because she needs to get better. And her grandmother came to that. Her grandmother became her highest source, and she was there every day, making sure that Stephanie did not leave.
My grandmother is very supportive. She's very active in the community, in her church. But I tell you that I was in jail for 30 days. My last arrest for possession, and I am just, no, I don't like jail. I don't like jail. I don't know how people become so accustomed to being there. And I was teased a lot for wanting to get out of there. The women in there were very persistent about me staying the 2 years, because the judge was like, okay, so you're gonna go to treatment. I didn't know what treatment was. I had no idea what the detox was. I had no idea. What is treatment? What are you talking about? Whatever, but I just know I wanted to get out of there. And I said, and I had drugs at home, and I told them, okay, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna go wherever the place they're telling me to go, and I am going to I'm gonna go get my drugs and get high, and I'll figure out how to deal with the rest later. But I saw a couple of people climb out the window while they were there in treatment. And then I saw them, we had our daily walks. I saw them on the street really messed up. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go back to looking like that. But the judge, drug court is a program where, you've got to stay and treat, you've got to be watched. Somebody has to watch over you for 18 months. And they say you complete the program or you go to jail and do the 18 months, and you still got to come out and do the program. So to me, that was really a no-brainer. I'll sit here for however long it takes, and I'll figure out how to break out soon. But
Good for you.
that never happened. Never happened. After the 30 days, I was like, you know what? I haven't had a drink in 30 days. I haven't had any cocaine in 30 days. And the people really aren't bad. You know, they're saying, you know, they're really not treating me bad. So maybe I should listen to them. And once I said maybe I should listen to them, you know, things got better. Things got better, but it definitely took a while for my head to clear.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. This has been great. I would please invite you to come back to our next speaker series, just to observe our next speaker, which we will not be having one. It's usually the first Tuesday of every month. We will not be having one in September due to Recovery Month.
Okay.
But please come down to Recovery Day. And does everybody know about Recovery Day?
September's my birth month. When is Recovery Day?
September 26th.
September 26th.
Oh man, I'm just gonna miss it. I'm coming back on the 27th.
Oh,
Oh,
we'll miss you.
Okay, well,
I'll remember next year.
and for those of you who would like to be involved in Recovery Day, we have a planning meeting. So please come on. It's Monday evenings at 6:30 to be able to have a say in what goes on at Recovery Day.
Absolutely.
Marianne, anything?
Well, as the saying goes, recovery is for everyone, every family, every community, and every person. So there you go.
And Leah?
I just want to say that I'm so proud of you, Stephanie.
Oh, thank
So
you.
proud of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Because at one
Thanks
time
to
I was
you.
telling, I
Yeah.
was telling Stephanie, you know, because her bedside manners were a little rough. And I was saying, maybe you should just go into research, right? But you know,
Yeah.
she's grown into this wonderful woman that really means what she says in terms of helping people. And yeah, recovery does work, and culturally appropriate services really do work. And it's important to sound that bell.
And
Because
I have a lot of research here that says so.
too many
Wow.
people, too many
I did
people are
do the
dying.
research.
Yeah, and so you did great. This I mean, we
Absolutely.
have to
Thank
give
you
her a round
again,
of applause
Stephanie.
because that's like pulling teeth getting her to do this. And
I know it,
like
because
you
you know
Thank
I wanted to
did
say no.
great.
This is my Tai Chi night. I don't do anything on Tuesday.
Nothing.
But I want to
nothing is
also thank everybody for joining us. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Hope to see you
Yeah.
again.
Thank you all. Nice
Thank
meeting you.
you.
Thanks for
Bye.
having
Thank
me.
you, Stephanie, you're wonderful.
Thanks.